Hi there, it's Steph here, actually in the bead shop this time, and today I'm going to show you how to make some really sweet spring earrings using the bellflower beads, which are Czech glass, and they just really lend themselves to little clusters. So here are the earrings slightly close up, so you can see there that they're all, the little bellflower beads are all nicely clustered together, which when they're hanging from an earring actually creates a really nice effect. Now I always like to be quite prepared, particularly when I'm doing something that requires a specific amount of beads and headpins. You can be quite well prepared. So I've got 15 bellflower beads for each earring, and then I've already got my 15 headpins ready, and we're going to be using just plain simple loops to create them all. But first we need to actually thread all the beads onto the headpins. So rather than actually picking up one bead, making a loop, cutting off the excess and putting that to one side, I tend to thread all of my beads first. So I'm going to speed this up because otherwise we'll be here forever. So once we've got all of these threaded up, if only I could do it this quick in real life, it would save a lot of time. Brilliant. So there's our 15 beads all ready. So the next thing to do is to actually make our plain loops in each headpin. I'm going to use professional round nose pliers to make my loop. They make nice, neat, small loops, which you need for this project. So I'm holding my bead at the bottom, and then I'm just going to grip quite close to the end of my pliers, leaving about a 1mm gap above the bead. And the first step, holding onto your bead, is to push about 45 degrees away from you, so you can see that there. And then the next step is to push the long piece of wire over the top of the pliers towards you, so it's pointing downwards, and that's creating the top of the loop. And just reposition your pliers so you're gripping the top, and then you can push the last little bit backwards, and there we have our loop. And now we need to do this in every single one. So it's just, obviously, sped up is quite quick, but obviously you can slow this down, rewatch making a loop as many times as you need to. I'm also going to put a link underneath the video which will take you to our really useful how-to leaflet, which has individual diagrams as to all the different steps for making a loop. I know everyone has their own way, but I find this the most effective way of making loops. So there we go. So that's almost 15 loops made. There we go. Brilliant. So now obviously we need to cut off all the excess wire. So now the trick is here to cut just inside the loop. Everyone always thinks that you're going to cut the rest of the loop off. Every time I teach a workshop, everyone's always scared of this part. So you want to get your cutters right inside the loop, give it a good squeeze, and there you have a nice loop without any excess overlapping, which is what you want really. I'm using flush cutters because they do tend to get that bit closer than hobby cutters. Again, it's personal preference. You might have your favourite pair of cutters at home which you like to use. That's absolutely fine. But since first using flush cutters, I've never gone back to anything else. So, okay, so again, speeding this bit up. So I'm going to just chop off all the excess bits of wire. There we go, almost there. Brilliant. So now we have 15 individual little drops. Now the only problem with creating a loop like this and then cutting off the excess wire, you always end up with the loop at a slight angle and a tiny gap. So all we do to correct that is use chain nose pliers, pinching over the top. Sometimes they're a bit bent like that as well, so you can just tweak them ever so slightly, make sure the gap's nice and closed because we don't want any beads dropping off later. So it's usually just a tiny little tweak, just pushing it so that the wire meets nicely and neatly in the middle. So again, do that to every single one. Some you might find don't need very much work at all, others might just need a little bit of a wiggle. Brilliant. Okay, so now we've come to the actual assembly of the earring. Now I've put my beads together in small groups there. There's one single bead at the bottom and I'm adding a 4mm jump ring to that. So that's going on there, that's just getting closed, and that's now ready to hang right at the bottom, so all the cluster comes to a slight point at the bottom. So I'm just going to pop that to one side for now, and then I'm going to open up a slightly bigger jump ring. I'm using a 5mm jump ring for the next bit. So I tend to use 2 pairs of chain nose pliers. I find it's a bit easier. They don't tend to mark the jump rings when you're opening them as well. And then I'm putting 2 bellflowers on there, just straight onto the jump ring there. And then I'm going to pop the 4mm jump ring that's attached to the first bead on there, so that's going to sit in the centre. And then I'm also going to put 2 more bellflowers on there, and then I need to close that. So it's always worth taking a little bit of time to make sure your jump rings are really nice and flush. So often takes a little bit of a wiggle back and forth to get them really nice and neat. And it's important at this point that when you pop this first section down, the beads don't jump around. So you want it to be sat with 2 on either side, which they are at the moment. And I've got a second 5mm jump ring here. And this one's going to be a bit tricky because we're going to be fitting quite a lot into this one jump ring. So you might need to reposition where you're holding the jump ring. And also a good trick here is to not open it too far. If you open it really far, you might find that things are sliding off while you're trying to close and add more things in. So I haven't got a very big gap there, but it is plenty big enough to be able to slide everything on. So I've got 5 bellflowers on there. I'm just repositioning my pliers there. And then I'm sliding on the 5mm jump ring from the first little bundle. And then I'm going to put on 5 more individual flowers. So this is where you need your concentration. No heavy breathing, no cats around. So slide all those on there. If you grip with your dominant hand really close to the top of the jump ring, you should be able to get everything on there without having to reposition. And then you just need to get your pliers in there and close it. And then at this point I realised, I haven't added in my fish hook, so I just reopened them slightly again. So you might as well pop the fish hook in at the same time, because you know then it's going to be exactly in the middle. You could always add it afterwards, but then there's the chance of some of the beads jumping around over the top jump ring. So there we have it, the finished earring. So the assembly is actually quite simple, and I felt having the beads set out in a single bead, 2 pairs, and then 2 lots of 5 just meant it easy to know how many you're putting on at each stage. And then obviously you repeat the whole thing again to make your second earring. You'll find a full list for the materials used to make the earrings below, and feel free to share your makes with us on our various social media platforms. We always love to see what you're making. Thank you, and I hope you've enjoyed the video.